Timeline of cell discoveries. Cells are the battleground for defending our health and fighting aging. They are the places where viruses attack and where pharmaceuticals act. Here is a timeline describing how cells came to be known, how they function, and what possibilities they hold. The current theory of how living organisms form is explained by spontaneous generation. In 1653, Robert Hooke discovered the cell using a thin slice of cork through a microscope, whose maximum magnifying power was times 50. This work was funded by King Charles II. He used a microscope in this project. 29 years later, Antonio van Leeuwenhoek discovered the blood cells and described the cell nucleus by observing fish blood cells using a microscope whose magnification was times 250 in a project funded by the Royal Society. In the 17th century, Luigi Galvani, Caspar Friedrich Wolff, and others found more evidence that human body is full of cells. In 1766, Abraham Tremblay observed bacteria replicate by dividing in a process known as binary fission, by developing methods to keep bacteria alive and observe them under a microscope. In the 18th century, the following questions led to more discoveries. 1. How are cells formed? 2. How do cells communicate, if at all? 3. How do cells contain? 4. Were all tissues composed of cells? In 1820, Francois Vincent Raspail proposed that all cells form from other cells. His work was continued by Robert Brown in 1831, who named the cell nucleus and suggested its importance in fertilization. He used a microscope to observe asclepiads and orchids. 19 years later, Theodore Swan proposed that all living things are entirely made of cells. In 1858, Rudolf Virchow endorsed cell division and its role in pathology by drawing upon published information. In the early 19th century, Camillo Golgi discovered the Golgi apparatus. Golgi invented a method of staining by hardening nervous cells in potassium bichromate and then impregnating the sample with silver nitrate. The resultant reaction, known as the black reaction, allowed him to see the Golgi apparatus under the microscope. Other organelles were later discovered which informed the current structure of the cell, plant and animal cell. The understanding of the current cell structure depends on the works of Robert Hooke and Luigi Galvani, Caspar Friedrich Wolff, and others who found out that the human body is full of cells. These cells combine to form tissues. A group of tissues form organs, while several of these organs, whose functions are complementary, form the organ system. That is the timeline for cell discovery.